Okay, 2.9. Which of the big ideas do you see in what we discussed with Louis XIV? Analogy, cause and effect, compare and contrast, foreshadowing, irony, nothing new under the sun, paradox, or turning point. So make sure you get that down in your notes. Okay, now we're going to talk about Austria and the Habsburg family living there. Remember, we've talked already about the Habsburgs, two branches. We have Spain and Austria. So Leopold I, like Henry VIII of England, he did not expect to become the king. He had older brothers. So as a young man, Leopold is focused on joining the church because he's very devout and he's sort of nerdy. He wants to study and he's interested in scholarship. When his older brothers die, he realizes he is going to become king, and he eventually is going to copy or be inspired by Louis XIV of France, even in, learning to dance and wearing fancy costumes. In addition to holding the title King of Austria, the Habsburgs also hold the title of being Holy Roman Emperor. So Leopold becomes emperor in 1657. This is 9 years after the end of the 30 Years' War. If you'll remember the end of the 30 Years' War, we see the Spanish Habsburgs really sort of starting a downward spiral from which they will never recover. After the 30 Years' War, France was the most powerful. And so now Leopold is wondering, am I going to be like my cousins in Spain, or is there a way I can sort of repair the Austrian reputation and get back some of that power? So he's going to use France as his model. He's going to model his palace after Versailles. This is Schönbrunn Palace. It's located in Vienna, Austria. He doesn't have the same stone available to him, but he paints it a similar yellow color like Versailles. He creates beautiful gardens with fountains. He tries to create big rooms with impressive artwork. But none of it is quite as impressive or quite as magnificent as Versailles. And this is going to be a theme with Leopold. He never quite gets there, even though he's going to try using those 5 characteristics of absolute monarchs. Another issue Leopold has is a religious war ongoing, but not Christianity versus Christianity, but against Islam. The Ottoman Empire, and here is a horrible-looking Ottoman general. The Ottoman Empire attacks Austria because the Ottoman Empire was interested in getting power in Europe. They had already tried to go through Spain. Now they're going to try the other way. They're going to try and attack Vienna and then get a foothold within Europe. Because Austria had just gotten out of the 30 Years' War and their army is sort of depleted, Leopold needs help. He needs military help in order to defeat these invaders. So he asks France. Leopold asks Louis XIV, hey, you're Christian, we're Christian, we're trying to defeat these Muslims, and he asks for help. And France says, thanks, but no thanks. Because if Austria falls, that means that France is that much more powerful on the continent of Europe. So Leopold has to look for help elsewhere, and eventually he does get it from the Pope. At the time, there still are papal armies, papal lands, and the Pope sees this as a Christian issue. Here's Leopold in his armor. Remember, he is a Habsburg, so he has that characteristic sort of slightly deformed chin and mouth. So eventually, Austria is going to win this war against the Ottoman Empire, really because of the help of the Pope. And in any war, there has to be a winner and a loser, and usually the loser gives up something, whether money or territory. And the war is ended by this treaty, the Treaty of Karlowitz. And the main thing that the Ottoman Empire gives up is Hungary. So as a result of the Treaty of Karlowitz, now Austria has Hungary. This gives Austria a lot of more territory, which in Leopold's mind means more power. He's looking to be an absolute king. The problem is Hungary is very different from Austria. So because of the differences between the two countries, Leopold has a hard time, establishing himself as the single ruler over both. Some of the differences include language. Austrians speak German. Hungarians speak Hungarian. Austrians are Catholic. Hungarians are Protestant. just general culture and way of doing things. Austrians are very Germanic. They wear lederhosen and eat schnitzel. The Hungarians just have a different culture where they wear flowers on their head. Also, the style of leadership that each group is used to. Austria is used to having a single centralized leader, but in Hungary, they worked on a system of nobility, and they're called the magnates. So the magnates are the Hungarian nobles, and they really are the ones, and they're controlling local regions. They don't have a single central ruler. And these nobles are not going to be interested in giving up power to a king. So the nobles fight back, but eventually they are defeated, and they come to an agreement with Austria. The Peace of Satmar says, okay, the nobles are going to sign, the nobles or the magnates, they're going to sign an agreement that says, we agree that the King of Austria will be able to rule over Hungary, that he is king of both countries. But again, that's a piece of paper. It's very different what happens on a piece of paper versus what happens in real life. And the citizens, the people of Hungary, they don't like the idea of an Austrian king. He's different than them. They want to be ruled by someone who's similar, someone they're used to, like the magnates. So because the people, the day-to-day business never really catches up, Leopold is never fully able to have a centralized government that rules effectively over both Hungary and Austria. So sorry, Leopold. So now he has to move on to another issue. He's looking forward to future generations. Leopold is the one who's fighting to put his son as king of Spain. Remember, Louis XIV was trying to take power in Spain. Leopold in Austria says, hey, we're Habsburg. Spain is Habsburg. We have a better claim to the Spanish throne than you, but Louis XIV's army is much better. So Leopold loses that. Then he looks even further. This is his granddaughter, Maria Theresa. She really was the only one of her generation. She doesn't have brothers. So Leopold starts planning that eventually she will become the Queen of Austria, the Empress of the Holy Roman Empire. But there are neighbors of Austria who say, but we've never had a Holy Roman Empress. There's some sort of ancient law that prohibits females from taking power here. And that neighbor is Prussia. So there's going to be a war over this. Is Maria Theresa able to take power? Will she succeed to the throne? Or will someone else win? Prussia is the neighbor. And just barely, Prussia will lose and Maria Theresa will become the leader of Austria. So now to Prussia. The Prussian family, they're called the Hohenzollerns. Capital city, the main city is Berlin, so we can guess by foreshadowing that Prussian culture will be, influential in German culture if the current German capital is Berlin. If you can see by the red outline, Prussia is very small, also disjointed. It is part of the Holy Roman Empire. So it is one of those territories that has its own little local leader, but they're all united by a single emperor. The first one we're going to talk about is Frederick William. He's called the Great Elector. So he's one of these local nobles. He's an elector. And then he takes direction from the Holy Roman Emperor. And really, if you think of him or refer to him as the Great Elector, that is fine, because the names are going to get confusing. So again, this is right after the 30 Years' War. As part of the losing team, remember the Holy Roman Empire ends up being on the losing team. Prussia really was ravaged during the 30 Years' War. Both its territory, they don't have farmland, its people, lots of people died. It's estimated about 40% of the Prussians died during the 30 Years' War. The Great Elector sees it as his goal to rebuild and repair the damage after the 30 Years' War. That's why he's so great. One thing he does is he decides that Prussia should have a standing army, meaning that if there's a war, they shouldn't have to scramble to organize, but that in Prussia, from here on out, we'll have an army all the time, a professional army. And Prussia really becomes connected to this identity of the military. This, however, to have an army at all times is expensive, so the Great Elector is going to need to build up the economy. He does this in sort of two similar ways. First is he wants to trade more with other countries rather than purely relying on internal economies. By trading with other countries, then he can tax those countries or charge them more, export more, in order to gain money. Also, by taxing the people. And the Great Elector does this in a different way. Because the population was so low, it doesn't make sense to do a population-based tax or an income tax. Instead, he creates an excise tax, a sales tax. So he's helping the economy, and it's done in a way that is appropriate for the size of the population. His son is Frederick the First. He's called Frederick the First because he is a king. Under Frederick the First, he gets independence from the Holy Roman Empire. So now Prussia is its own independent country or sovereign country. So he is now king in Prussia. He is no longer an elector. He is the king. His son is Frederick William I, King of Prussia. He is known as the Soldier King, continuing this heritage of the military. When the Great Elector decides to have a standing army, he does it by requiring military service of all men. Now the Soldier King says we've got a few more generations. We have more citizens. If you don't want to do that required military service, you can pay a fee instead. So either way, the country benefits. Either they get more money or they get more soldiers. Frederick William is the king who's trying to take over Austria, the War of Austrian Succession, trying to take over Maria Theresa's place of power. One major reason he does this is Prussia's very small. He wants more territory to increase their power. But Frederick William is more than just a fighter. He also creates government-run primary schools. If he's thinking long-term, thinking about the health and viability of his country, it makes sense. Hey, if we want a strong economy, we need to teach kids math at a young age. If we want brilliant generals, we need to teach them how to read and write so they can read the wonderful, military strategists. And then finally, his son is Frederick the Great. Frederick the Great was the firstborn. He knew he was destined to become king, but he hated the idea. He rebelled. He's Frederick the emo. He's interested in studying his books and playing the violin. He doesn't want to be in the army. He hates that his family is known for being in the army. But eventually he grows up, he matures, he accepts that this is his destiny to be the king of Prussia. And Frederick the Great is known as what we call him an enlightened absolutist. He wants this power, he's accomplishing these things, but he's doing it in a slightly different way. One thing that's different is he really reasons that, sure, God has helped put me in this position, but he continues to rule because the people allow him to. If the people did not approve of what he was doing, they could rebel, they could assassinate him, something like that. So he is ruling by the approval and by the right of the people. He also continues his nerdiness. He continues studying and consulting and communicating with philosophers, people who are advising him on how to be a good king, what's going to be the most effective, what's going to be the best for his people. He's always looking to improve. Continuing that emo heritage, he supports the growth of arts and culture and more education within Prussia. He wants a rich culture. He wants a well-rounded society, not just a country full of soldiers. Also, in order to help the economy, Frederick the Great is tolerant of other religions. He welcomes Jews and Catholics because that type of diversity, when there's different people and they live in peace, they're going to contribute to the society, to the economy. Lastly, Frederick does finally gain some territory from Austria. There's Maria Theresa of Austria, older and fatter. She is queen, but she's not all that powerful. So Frederick the Great, using this Prussian army, is going to be able to gain some territory and gain some power within Europe. All right, that's 2.9.